Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Doug Brunke, CEO of Global Chamber. Thank you for joining us here on at least what's here at our headquarters in Scottsdale, Arizona. A little bit of an unusual wet morning for the desert of Arizona. We do webinars. We do a webinar every week, and we pick from really talented people around the world to be part of those. And we're really honored and pleased to have such an illustrious group to talk about e-commerce today. Just really awesome from all over the world. So we're going to kick off today with Isaiah Bollinger, who's the co-founder and CEO of Trellis. He's calling in from the Boston market. His topic today will be technology development of an e-commerce platform. So we're going to have each speaker give different aspects of this. And so for roughly 35 minutes, we'll have 6 different presentations, and then there'll be about 25 minutes at the end of this for Q&A. And if you have questions along the way, there's a chat box. Ask the questions there, and those of you in the room, if you have questions, either hand me a note or we'll get you involved with ask the question directly. Isaiah, you do a lot of really extraordinary work with e-commerce, and what's really unusual about your firm is that you kind of take it from end to end. So we thought we'd start with you with kind of that full perspective to tell us a little bit more about how companies can grow internationally through e-commerce platform, and hopefully you can give us some updates on some of the technologies that are being used today.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I know we got to be quick on time, so I'll jump right into it. Let me make sure this screen share works. Are you able to see my screen?
We're good.
All right, cool. Yeah, so you know, I'm the co-founder of Trellis. You know, we're a relatively small shop focused on some of the leading platforms like Magento, BigCommerce, Shopify. We do a little bit more than that. We do some custom work. We work with Amazon Web Services, but too many other partners to list. These are kind of the core platforms that we work with. So, you know, founded in 2012, and our focus is design and development. We do some marketing strategy, but marketing is really not our focus. Our focus is, like you said, end-to-end, helping the client with the requirements all the way through to designing and developing and launching the site as well as maintaining the site. So we can essentially be like the CTO and development team for you know, companies of various ranges of sizes. We have some very large customers as well as some very small customers. So I'm going to try and go quick because I know we're limited on time. So, you know, I kind of want to just touch on like the things that I see that you know, are making projects successful. Number one, and the order of this isn't necessarily exact, but I would say this part is pretty important in terms of being number one is the requirements gathering for a project. I think that's something that people really underestimate and they underinvest in. So we actually charge for some of this. We'll do a little bit of this upfront for free, but it's an in-depth process that requires a lot of, you know, technical expertise to really do correctly. And I think a lot of, you know, businesses kind of underestimate this. They'll come to you and say, oh, how much for a website? Or, you know, I just want an e-commerce site. And they haven't really thought through all of the details of what they want. And it requires so much thought to really get into like, how many templates are you building? Or, you know, how many different variations of designs are you building? What are all the different, you know, extensions or modules being installed or custom built, or what are the integrations? How are you transferring data if you have an existing platform to a new platform? There's a lot that goes into figuring that out. So I think that's extremely important. I think the other is really good seamless communication. So we use Slack with our clients. Not saying that you have to follow the way that we do things, but if you're going to work, you know, if you hire internal developers, that's obviously a little bit easier because they're part of your team. But if you're going to hire an agency, then I would find a way to make sure that you're communicating with them in some sort of real time. Because you're going to need daily communication to really be successful. And the other thing that I think businesses really fail on is they underestimate their involvement in the project. They're like, oh, you know, we're going to outsource this to, you know, we're going to hire an agency to build our site. But at the end of the day, it's your business, your content, it's your expertise as a business. You can't outsource all of that. Otherwise, why are you running a business? And e-commerce is becoming more and more critical to businesses. So I highly recommend being heavily involved in the project, and especially in the areas where, agency maybe isn't the best person to do that part of the job. So as part of the requirements, then I would also figure out what platform you're going to use. That kind of goes hand in hand. So 1 and 4 kind of go hand in hand. So there's a lot of platforms on the market. Obviously, I'm biased to certain platforms that we do, but part of the reason we do those platforms is because they have a huge market. And I think there's a lot of advantage to using a platform that has large market share, because there's a lot of agencies, there's a lot of developers that know that platform. There's a lot of extensions and apps. In today's world with technology, you don't really want to be building a lot of things from the ground up unless you're like extremely technically savvy or have like a massive budget. So you really want to take advantage of the technologies that have already been built over the last decade or 2 decades, like a Shopify or Magento and all the marketplace apps that they have. So you really, that's what we do in requirements. We help people figure out all the pieces of the project that can be kind of put together that don't necessarily require a lot of custom development from the ground up. So you can save a lot of money that way. So definitely choosing the right platform is important. I would highly recommend also making sure that you're confident the platform will fit your needs for the next 3 to 5 years. I think it's pretty hard to go beyond 3 years. Things are changing so fast, but replatforming really sucks. So you don't want to be replatforming over and over. You're not going to really get anywhere if you're constantly doing that. So I'm trying to kind of run through this quickly. Some of the other, as we get through the requirements, the next steps are, designing the actual site. And that could be a very simple process depending on how in-depth you want to go. One thing that's not listed here is you may even want to leverage a theme. So some of the platforms have themes that you can use that speed up the design process. Or you might want to do a more custom design going all the way through wireframes and visual designs. And there's a lot of design tools that can help you with that. And then, I'm sure many people have heard about the full stack developer. I think I've worked with a lot of developers, and I think that there are some full stack developers. I think they're very rare, to be honest, and most developers are either better at back end or better at front ends, and maybe they know both, but really they're better at one or the other. So we kind of split up the projects and look at it as front end and back ends. Front end is kind of like the visual output of the site, what you're seeing on the site. Back end's all the logic, how it's working. How is it being hosted? How's the database kind of configured, and all of that? Development operations is another area that I think people really don't really understand and should get more educated on. So I think it's important to make sure that you have those 2 bases covered, and just having one guy that says they can do it all is pretty rare. I think it's important to kind of think of it in those 2 ways. Then obviously you want to, once you've built out the site, the front end and the back end, and everything's working, you want to spend a lot of time testing. We like to spend an entire month testing. So a lot of people are like, oh, I want to build my site in 3 months. Well, that's not going to give you much time to test. So, I highly recommend spending as much time testing and really taking testing seriously, because now there's so many devices. There's, so many browser types and devices. There's so many edge cases that can cause problems that if you don't thoroughly test, you're going to launch a half-working site. So I don't know how much time I've already taken up, so I'm just going to kind of...
Yeah, well, I think we're going to have to wrap up maybe 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah. So these are some of the other things that we see that are important is think about how your project's going to be run. Is it going to be more agile-based? Is it going to be more waterfall-based? Are you going to pay hourly? Or are you going to pay fixed bid? There's a lot of pros and cons to all of these different... These are kind of the intangibles, I would say, of the project. So I really think about the team, how you're doing the project, and then also making sure that your first project might not be successful. So you really need to adapt and refine what you're building over time to be successful. So I'll leave it at that so that we can move on.
Fantastic, Isaiah. Thank you very much. Great framework. And for everybody, there will be information after this event, both contact information and also additional information from at least some of the speakers, so that we're not intending to have each speaker give a full presentation, just enough to wet your whistle and to ask some questions. Speaking of wetting the whistle, Charlie Alsmiller, you're actually you're going to bring some international perspective to this, because you're in Dallas, you're the CEO of Enspir, and you are have been involved in a lot of different international activities, including you're on the North Texas District Export Council. So congratulations on the progress that you've made there in being a thought leader, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts today.
Well, thanks so much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Caesar's got control of the slides, so I'm going to ask him just to flip through these here real quick. But go ahead, the first one there, Caesar. So just a little bit about me, and you mentioned the North Texas District Export Council. I'm pretty excited about that. That's working with local companies to help them figure out how to export their products. And what I will say is interest in e-commerce is expanding dramatically, and not just B2C e-commerce, but B2B e-commerce. And that's actually where I focused my career really since 2002. Been doing business globally, both in energy, but also for the last 12 years of the global GS1 standards body, and that's the people behind barcodes. So there's a barcode on most of your products all over the world. I've worked with the standards and the data flow for how that product data gets synchronized all over the world. So I've really been focused heavily on the complex interactions between companies globally, and that's what Enspir does. We're really trying to make that process as simple as possible for middle market companies who might be looking to expand globally. So if you have any questions on that, let me know. But really, something as simple as product data is something that people really forget about, even in a B2C area. But in B2B, it becomes even more complicated, because you can often have thousands or tens of thousands of products that you're selling through your e-commerce platform. Go ahead and hit the next slide, Caesar. So, what is B2B e-commerce and what makes it different? And just a couple of definitions here from PC Magazine and Investopedia. The first is, it's a type of commerce transaction that exists between businesses, such as perhaps a manufacturer and a wholesaler and retailer. And this is really interesting in global, in setting up an export business, because typically you're going to work through channels. It's very rare that you would go straight into a foreign market, for example. You're going to want to establish relationships with other businesses who would need to sell those products. So just a couple of definitions there. Go ahead and hit the next slide. And so how's it different? So we talk about selling to businesses and not individuals. And I think the key thing here to realize is if we've all bought or sold products to a big company, there's almost always a formalized and structured buying process. You're not dealing with, on-demand decisions. You're dealing with a lot of logics. You're often dealing with customized or negotiated terms for shipping, pricing, delivery agreements. All of these things can get very, very complicated very quickly in the B2B e-commerce world. And I've seen a lot of companies over the years take some of these platforms that we were just talking about, specifically Magento and Shopify and others, and try to apply those to a B2B environment, and it's very difficult, and you end up with a lot of challenges there. So, a lot of companies have very, very sophisticated buying processes. They're going to use pooling processes. They're going to be pooling purchases, and you're going to have to respond to this in your e-commerce strategy. So, my last bullet here really is that the former, the guy in the suit strategy is dying a very rapid death. We've got a lot of trends working against the guy in the suit. Specifically, we're seeing millennials move into buying roles in organizations, and they have a different way of looking at things. So go ahead and hit the next slide there. Yeah, so here's some stats. Forrester says 74% of the B2B buy from a website because it's more convenient than a salesperson. So there's some of that millennial behavior you're seeing in the corporate buying process. And we're also seeing more and more companies demanding a real online presence. They call it the Amazon effect for corporations. People are looking for, a true online experience for buying their business-to-business products. Let's go ahead and hit the next slide. So here's some numbers which are pretty staggering when you look at it. The global online gross sales volume between companies in 2012 was 5.5 trillion. That is predicted by Frost & Sullivan to go to over 12 trillion by 2020. So I actually think this is a really good area to be focusing on, specifically helping businesses be more effective selling to other businesses. Go ahead and hit the next slide. So, we talked a little bit in the last presenter about some of the key requirements for e-commerce. I'm going to add to that and talk about some of the key requirements for business-to-business e-commerce. And the first is corporate accounts. So your relationship with a customer can span multiple locations, divisions, countries, and most B2C e-commerce platforms don't really conceptualize this, or if they do, it's a secondary idea. So that's really important. It's kind of an architectural, functional view of how the e-commerce platform is set up. Magento, I know, has some B2B plugins and things that can be used, but it's not really designed from the ground up to handle corporate accounts. Complex pricing scenarios, so negotiated pricing, volume discounts, credit limits, all those have to be accounted for in the e-commerce platform. The third one here, catalog management. That, to me, has been one of these problems that people often overlook when they're looking at their e-commerce strategy. It can be very, very difficult to simply get information about your product out to your sales channels internationally onto e-commerce platforms, and managing that is a very, very big deal. So I've got a lot of experience with that particular issue, and I'm telling you, it's huge. It's not getting any better. There are standards that are being developed. GS1's been really leading this, and you've got a lot of different demands on you as an organization trying to get your product data into the right hands and in the right format. And then lastly, process compliance. Again, if you're working as a seller, you're probably going to have to comply with your buyer's purchase-to-pay process. And in some cases, that purchase-to-pay process is electronic. You may receive a purchase order, and you may receive it electronically. That may be the only way this particular buyer is going to do business with you. You have to send them advanced shipping notices. You have to send them invoices. This process can be heavily prescribed and electronic. And in some cases, if you don't comply with the process, depending on your customer, you can actually have fines and lose business to that customer. It really just depends on that particular situation.
Okay.
Next slide.
So appreciate that, Charlie. We're going to need to move on to the next speaker. Did you want to wrap up anything in your last 30 seconds?
No, hit the next slide real quick. What I will just say is, we were talking about know your process, understand your product data, localize your offerings, and pick your technology really carefully, specifically when it comes to B2B, if that is your target. And obviously, feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
Fantastic. And we do have some questions that have come in for both of the speakers, and so we'll handle those at the end of the speaking period. Our next fellow is actually nearby us here in the Phoenix metro area, Arnie Kuenn. He's a marketing wizard, so he's a CEO at Vertical Measures. He actually got connected to Global Chamber through one of our members, and who said they're the best at marketing. And while Arnie, they themselves don't do e-commerce sites, they do all the marketing related to not just e-commerce, but a lot of different other businesses. And today, Arnie's going to be talking about selling B2C through e-commerce. Arnie, thanks for talking today.
Hey, you bet. Thanks, Doug. And thanks, everyone, for joining us and spending an hour with us. When Doug and Cesar asked me to participate and told me 5 to 6 minutes, I thought maybe the best approach would be a straight talk focused on one aspect of B2C from an e-commerce perspective. And of course, because the name of our agency is Vertical Measures, and we're a digital marketing agency, and because, as Doug had mentioned, we're all about marketing, that's going to be the focus of my talk. So from quick background, we've worked with all sorts of sizes of B2B companies. Today I'm going to talk about B2C, and we've worked with companies like Home Depot and Best Buy from a content, SEO, and even a paid media perspective. So I try to think of if I could get one core concept across to everybody who's listening and curious about this. I would say that probably the single key to success, and it even puts to the first couple of presentations and probably to the few that follow me, but the single key to success for a B2C e-com play, again, whether you're large, small, or whatever, and actually any online business, is to have a documented digital marketing strategy. We consistently see in other people's studies and in our own studies a direct correlation between the success and the failure of online marketing between those who have a written or a documented strategy and those that don't. In fact, it's been about a month ago, I was actually up in the Northwest presenting an internal workshop to a Fortune 500 company who has about 60 different operating companies around the world, and I think they're almost all B2B. And normally we teach a lot of workshops all around the world, and normally a question we ask these days in the beginning is, how many of you have been successful with your digital marketing for 12 months in a row? And pretty consistently, and this is exactly what we saw at this company as well, pretty consistently we see about 30% of the people raise their hands and say that they have been successful for 12 months in a row, or at least their view of success, which means 70% are not successful. And then we usually follow it up with a question of, how many of you have a documented strategy? And not surprisingly, based on what I'm saying, we see almost the exact same correlation. About 70% of those companies that we surveyed in the Northwest and again in our workshops indicate that they do not have a documented digital marketing strategy. And again, it correlates almost perfectly every time. So the question would be, why don't you? What should a strategy consist of? Does it need to be a long, in-depth strategy? And I'll try to quickly answer those questions in just a few minutes. But generally, I would say it doesn't have to be a long strategy. In fact, we've really, as an agency, shied away from creating those, what we would call a thump strategy, where you drop a 100-page strategy on somebody's desk, or it winds up on their intranet or whatever, because we find that even though the company who hired us to produce those, over the years, were excited to get it and felt like every detail was covered, personas and workflows and so on and so forth, that quickly they forgot where it was, or that person moved on who was responsible for it, or whatever all the fill-in-the-blank scenarios might be, and the strategy wasn't being followed. So typically now we're starting up with a fairly short strategy, depending on the size of the company, the scope of their products, and so on and so forth. It could be 8-10 pages, and it might be 40 pages. But what we do is every 90 days, we do a quarterly review and we update the strategy. So we're constantly keeping the strategy in front of all of the key players at the organizations that we're working with. So I'd recommend something similar for you as well. We just have found that's really successful. And the strategy really needs to focus on what we would think are primarily the 3 pillars to success for digital marketing, which is content, which is hopefully no surprise to anybody on the call, organic or SEO, and then paid. Those are really pretty much the 3 things, and they have to all work together. And part of that is really understanding your individual customers' journeys. And you might have within an organization, because of your product lines, you might have very different personas and very different customer journeys based on specific product lines. So you really need to understand those, and then understand what content you currently have by doing an audit, and what content do you need to produce to fill in those gaps. Because as mentioned just in the previous presentation, it's somewhere in the 90s. I've seen 85 to 95% of the time, all of us, everybody on this call, all of your customers, we turn to search engines to start researching a solution for whatever problem we're having, and we're looking for that information online. So you might have maybe at the top of the funnel, maybe the awareness stage content, but you don't have a whole lot for consideration or decision stage content. And if that's the case, they may have found you first, but they're now moving on to a competitor who's providing more answers and deeper in the funnel and so on and so forth. So you really need to understand the entire journey, create content around it, make sure it's optimized. And then today, because of the changes with Google and social platforms and everything else, we're definitely finding you have to have a good balance of paid media in the mix. It's just no longer a build it and they will come. Your organic listings are getting pushed further and further down the page on Google search results. So you need to really have some paid media in your mix as well. And I think I'll just wrap there. The only thing I want to say, and that Doug's mentioned a couple times that they'll send this out, but we have a 6-minute video that covers everything I just said, that has slides and graphs and data and all that. I'm happy to send that video out to anybody who wants to reach me at arniek@verticalmeasures.com. Doug will provide that detail as well, but just want to let you know that everything I just said I can send you in a video so you can watch or share with your teams. That's
awesome. That's awesome, Arnie. Thank you very much. And you brought up content, so we already have some questions about that, of how to keep up on that. Tina certainly knows all about that. Tina Mani is calling in from the Bangalore Metro. So good evening, Tina. She is the CEO of Yfret, Y-F-R-E-T. And Tina, you're going to be talking about customer engagement in the digital age and the opportunity and challenge. You guys are so amazing at what you do in terms of B2C product marketing. There's talk about content, right? But we really look forward to hearing from you about the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Caesar, so you want to put my slides up? Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Mani. I'm the founder and CEO of Yfret. Yfret is basically Yfret because we make it simple. So our goal is to basically have a product that can simplify digital marketing. You guys just heard, just before this, you heard about the complexities and the need for a strategy. And our goal is to bring the data that's most important for the marketer out to the surface and make it actionable. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so just to give an introduction to the digital consumer, right? So we have an opportunity and we have a challenge. And the good thing about the digital consumer is he's curious and open to discovery. So that presents an opportunity that now you have, you can reach people that are not in your locality. It's not like having a store. You can have people across the globe is your limit basically. You have online, people are online all the time. So you have around the clock business. And there is hardly anything called loyalty anymore. So people are ready to experiment all the time. So you can also win customers from other established businesses. So that's the opportunity. On the other hand, your digital consumer is extremely impatient, looking for, got lots of choices, easily distracted. So which means that you have a really, really short time to get your customers' attention. That's the challenge. So if you can solve this problem, you're the hero. Right, so we'll go to the next slide now. So the first piece is when you get your store started. So I know that we have a mixed audience, but I'll just address, assuming that there are some people who've just starting out a business. So the first thing is, where do you get your customers from? So if you already have a physical established store, obviously that's your first set of customers or your store customers. Let them know about your online store, get referrals, go to social media, run events. So these are all sort of no-brainers, but it's really important that you first have a set of known customers, because from the known customers, when they come online, you really start learning about them. And we believe, at Yfret, we believe that all marketing should be data-driven, which means that you must learn the customer behavior from day one. A lot of small businesses think that data-driven marketing is a problem for large businesses, but we insist that you should know them, right when they start coming to your site. So now that you've got your first set of customers, what do you do? How do you grow it? So one idea, of course, is go where they are. So if you have products, before you set up your store, we recommend you, put your product out on at least a Facebook store, because you can understand how effective your cataloging is, how effective your messaging is, and fix all that before you really get to your store. And put them out on marketplaces, see the responses. Go to sites that are relevant to your business. So for example, if you're a fashion site, a fashion business, go to something like Pop Sugar or some site that talks about fashion. So that's the first thing. Second piece is use your data to now acquire new customers. But really important thing to know here is you should not lose track of the money you're spending, because since you do have a big opportunity, your money can just go in the wrong places if you're not doing it carefully. So we recommend ads to be like the much later thing that you try before you use your organic methods. And there are many methods on Facebook and Google to use the current data. For example, you have lookalike audiences. I won't get into detail, but just to keep you guys aware that there are methods. So next slide, please. Now the second piece. So once you've got your target audience, now I just said that they have a short attention span. So you need content, and we heard about content earlier. In terms of e-commerce, right? So we believe that content should be educational. So educational doesn't mean like big thing. It just means that your customer needs to know about your products. So it's very, very important to be able to sort of put the values of your products in the front and sort of explain that well. The content should be personal. It should address the reasons why they would not buy. So this is important. If they come to your site, they would have 100 things, 100 questions. Who are these guys? What's so special about this product versus something else? What's the shipping time? What are the return policies? So all these things should be right on the face, right? And finally, social proof is important because everybody learns from others. Now, now that people come to your store, what's the most important thing is to engage them from day one. So when we talk about engagement, it's personalization and quick discovery. Remember that people are not going to browse through 3 or 4 clicks to get to what they need. So really important to personalize content, even if you're a small player. And there are many, many plugins available. Don't worry about having too much stuff on your page. As long as things don't affect your load speed, you're good. But keep your site dynamic. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a long slide, but I just want to emphasize here that there are many, many channels to reach your customers. And when I send this slide out, probably it will be good for you to just go through all these different channels.
Okay.
And depending on your business, one of them would be the most effective for you.
Tina, would you like to take 30 seconds and wrap up?
Yes, yes. So finally, I want to say that you should invest in the right tools. Technologies are available. This is the age of technology. So invest in tools, find out what's out there, and that's it. If you have any more questions, reach out. Thank you.
Fantastic. And as you can see from the slides there, the capabilities of Yfret around multiple product marketing is really quite special. So we've tried to pick 6 people that all have different capabilities, and our next speaker, Elshan, who's calling in from the Washington, D.C. Metro, is a managing director of WCC International, and they handle the operational side of e-commerce along with the overall e-commerce. And so Elshan's going to be talking about e-commerce as a platform to both export and import your product. Elshan, thank you for your support, and we look forward to hearing from you. Uh-oh, we got to, there you go. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Sorry. Great picture.
That's great. So yeah, basically all of our speakers have covered many aspects like from technological standpoint and ease of use of the website, access to the website. But the main challenge for businesses across the borders, whether the US seller or US buyer or foreign seller, is like how to deal with selling across countries, like across international boundaries. Sometimes people say, selling around the world is easy as selling across town. All you need to know is shipping, costs, duties, taxes, export laws, and regulations of the country where your prospective buyer is located. Does it sound easy? Not at all. And just a second. So basically, the main challenge is the technological problem, like how to deal with payments, how to deal with physical storage, and how to deal with physical shipping of product to end user. And most of the time, my experience in US, from the US standpoint, is that companies are kind of reluctant to enter into international trades arena. Like they're happy to sell in the most closest border would be probably Canada or Mexico, which they feel comfortable to sell. So it's like their comfort area. And but what about selling outside? Like 95%, we always tell about like 95% of the marketplace is outside of the United States. And the same thing is applicable to foreign sellers that are trying to get into the US marketplace. So everyone has the same issue, like how to make sure that they comply with the regulatory constraints, financial constraints. And unfortunately, in the most parts of the world, the problem is how to get paid through the online structures and online mechanisms. We can always talk about access to million user e-global platforms like Amazon, eBay, Etsy, and others. Like our first speaker was talking about Shopify. Shopify unleashes opportunities for everyone around the world. But again, sometimes it's hard to sell product if you're dealing with technologically advanced country like countries in the European Union or in Southeast Asia. It's like kind of easy. But what about selling your product and goods to countries where they don't have option to pay online? And people come up with different solutions, and some of our customers that sell primarily like input materials for agricultural producers like smallholder farmers, they do provide great solutions, but we were helping them to communicate with customers overseas. Like our particular target is the Caspian region, and it's always challenging to have a US company sell to that part of the world because they don't want to deal simply with legalities or financial issues. They don't want to pay extra taxes outside of the country, but you need to deal with regulatory framework in the country that you're trying to sell. And I don't want to take much of your time, but basically there are many elements that you have to think about. And the most important is like 5 important elements that you always think is like what you sell, and if there is a buyer in a foreign country, you know, and who is the buyer, like target from the business to consumer perspective, from the business to business perspective, and how to deliver. Finally, the most challenging part is how to deliver product. If it's like under 200 pounds, probably you can use DHL service or someone else like FedEx and ship product from US to a final buyer, end user. But what about shipping 1 pallet of product? And people don't want to deal with international trade. So there are a bunch of companies around the US that help companies to help them facilitate the real transactional side of the import-export business. And one of this, obviously, our company, we help from, as long as the buyer and seller found themselves each other, we can help them to logistically move their goods and services across borders. So if you have any questions, I will be happy to address those questions. Sorry, I was not prepared for the presentation like with slides, but we do have workshops from time to time. If you want to look into the presentation slides with video recordings, we will be happy to share with anyone who is interested in this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Elshan. And you obviously touched on 2 really important things, the delivery of the product and getting paid. And so, yeah. So that's a key part of it. And our last speaker, Carlos Goyco, is calling in, I believe, from Puerto Rico. And so, Carlos, you've actually, after the Hurricane Maria, you went out and said, hey, I want to solve a problem. And you've actually connected writers in Puerto Rico to Puerto Ricans that are living outside of the island. And so you've actually applied e-commerce techniques to your business. So looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. Thanks to Global Chamber. I'm glad to be part of this webinar. I just want to share my experience. I want to be very practical and just share what we have done and how we built our startup from basically nothing to what we are right now, that we are participating at a startup accelerator. So just sharing the experience, and hopefully people that want to get started on e-commerce can find this very helpful. So basically I worked at a company that distributes books here in Puerto Rico before the hurricane. And after Hurricane Maria, I find myself unemployed. So I was in the position to find something to do that was related to books. And since a lot of Puerto Ricans were leaving the island to the States, right now here in Puerto Rico, so you can get a spectrum of the market, it's 3.3 million Puerto Ricans, and in the States there are 5.5 and growing. So basically there are more Puerto Ricans in the States than here in Puerto Rico. So that was the opportunity that we saw, and e-commerce made it possible for us to launch a minimum viable product that was ready to go to market. So what we did was we built our platform on Shopify. Our website is called libros787. It's books787.com. 787 is the area code here in Puerto Rico, so every Puerto Rican understands the meaning behind the name. So what we did is to connect Puerto Ricans all around the world with their culture through literature. That was the proposal, since most of these books are very hard to find even here in Puerto Rico. The problem we solved was to make it accessible for everyone. And for Puerto Ricans in the state that want to stay connected to the culture and to keep their next generation of Puerto Ricans that are growing in the States to keep in contact with their roots. So that was the opportunity. I always say that to build an e-commerce platform, you don't have to create the next new thing. Sometimes it's just to keep it simple. And find products or a niche that is unattended. And for us, that was key. So we basically did that from first day we started selling. Right now we have already been through this at least 7 months, and we already sold around 4,000 orders. So e-commerce is definitely key in this. I want to touch a little bit of more information about how we get our clients, because that is very important. At this stage right now, when you're starting, it's very difficult, and it costs money to acquire clients, new clients. So what we basically have done, we have done a mix of SEO, content creation, and Facebook ads. I have to say that Facebook ads helps a lot, but yeah, you have to have money. For us, it has been it has been a blessing that we're here on a startup accelerator, that we have funding, and we can grow faster using money that is not ours. but yeah, content is king in this game. Definitely. Being a niche and something that there is not a lot of noise on a specific space where you are doing e-commerce helps a lot. When you create content that is that there is not a lot of it on the web, and there are people looking for it, you basically have something special. So yeah, content is the key to scale organically. And to boost it up with Facebook ads is adding like gasoline to fire. So that works a lot. But yeah, I have to say that the most important thing is to start, when you're starting an e-commerce platform, is to know the industry that you're going into, understand the market, do a lot of market research, and yeah, content. So yeah, that's basically it. I want to be able to answer a lot of questions that the participants may have. So I think that it would be better if that they do the questions, and I can be more specific on each topic. But yeah, basically that's it. E-commerce is definitely the platform of the future. It enables us to connect with Puerto Ricans that are not here, and that wasn't possible until now for this specific industry, and yeah, it could be done in many other. So yeah, I exhort everyone to go ahead and venture in the e-commerce world.
Thank you, Carlos. Really appreciate it for sharing your business. And so that's the end of our speakers, and now we're in the Q&A phase. And so I'd ask each of the speakers, if you'd like to contribute to any question, please jump right in. But don't feel like you have to answer every question, because we have quite a number of them. There's actually a couple questions related to products versus services, and what are some of the things that, and in particular from somebody who has a service, could you talk a little bit about, you know, what some of the differences are if you've got a service, and how is that market relative to strict product sales via e-commerce? Who would like to take that question?
I'll make a quick comment on that. In my experience, the difference comes out mostly in how you engage with the end customer. So in the case of a service, you're going to be, at least in my experience, much more collaborative in working with a particular customer on their specific requirements. In the products world, it's about volume. It's about getting product data into the hands of as many of your channels as you can. So it drives a whole different engagement strategy. So for example, when we go to sell services overseas, we need to have humans that can have what I call a competent conversation inserted into that process somehow into whatever our platform is. On the product side, obviously you want to automate that as much as you can. So that's my 2 cents worth on that.
Okay, and this, one of the people asking this is Steve Shevland, who operates contact centers around the world, and so he was also asking about any specific trends related to services. Are you seeing an uptick, a growth rate that's comparable to B2B or B2C? Kind of what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's early stages in terms of e-commerce services. People aren't as into it yet. But I think eventually it's going to become more and more normal, and it's going to start to take over, because ultimately no one wants to spend like hours and hours talking to people. They want something quick that they can buy and solve their problem. So that's what selling via e-commerce services. So we're already investing that internally for our own services. We're pretty far along in that process. It's not quite to the point where you can actually just like check out on our site, but I think that's not too far off for us. For some of our more basic services. And a good example of a service that I just signed up for, it's technically a software as a service, but I mean, it's the same concept as e-commerce in the sense that I'm buying online. And it's a part-time HR service. So, you know, we're kind of like at that size where we almost need like a full-time HR person, but it's kind of expensive to invest in an HR team. So they provide like a basically expert HR service for just a small monthly fee. Obviously you don't get them full time, but you get kind of that expertise, and we just pay them a monthly fee via like credit card. And it's kind of like an e-commerce like experience, just sign up. There's an onboarding fee, and then it's just a monthly fee. So I see that really growing in the next, you know, I think it's a nice place to be in the sense that you're not competing against Amazon, right? So I think eventually it'll get there, and yeah, we're already investing in it internally. And I think, you know, if you're selling a service, I would recommend investing in it, especially if you're trying to target smaller customers. You know, if you're selling to Fortune 500, you don't need that because you're maybe selling them $100,000 or $500,000 product. But if you're selling sub 100K services, I would recommend looking into it.
Okay. Any other comments out there relative to service products, either the marketing side of it or trends?
Can I add on a few things?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead, Elshan.
So speaking of services, for example, one of our clients is the Coolbot. This is the company that provides both products and services. And it's much easier to sell tangible product versus services. Sometimes you need, depending on the product itself. For example, if you go today to the Fiverr.com or Upwork.com websites, this is simply purely specifically targeting service area, service vendors, service sellers. And the way how you deliver the product and then supplementary service also affects your marketing strategy. And most of the time, our clients, we always advise them to find people locally, like who can be your brand ambassador locally, in addition to the service they're trying to sell. Because again, it depends. If it's a business to government, it's a little different. If it's a business to company, B2Bs. So the way how you reach out to your customer is important in the service business.
Okay, very good. One quick question for you, Elshan. You mentioned that you specialize in a certain region. It sounded like the Tuscan region, but what did you actually say?
Well, it's Caspian region, like countries Caspian. Around, yeah, Caspian. We deal with the most challenging probably part of the world where the laws are kind of sometimes written on the paper but not working in reality. So you have to find some workarounds from the legal perspective. We help companies. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense to keep inventory in one of those target countries. It's better to ship one pallet at a time once you have a client in that particular region, like in one country, say Turkey or Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan or Georgia or Russia even. The situation with Russia, it seems like a little bit complicated, the perspective and perception from the U.S. standpoint. Sometimes people say, you know, we have a sanction against Russia and we don't want to deal with Russia. But it's a huge marketplace. Why you don't want to deal with Russia if you can comply with the export sanction list rules, export rules of the U.S.? I mean, the sky is the limit. And it's, if you think the region as a whole, it's like 300 million people.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the couple questions from Donahue and Steve, if we didn't answer your question, let us know. The next question is from Christian Aguirre, who I believe has a group in Hermosillo, Mexico, a group watching this and participating. And this is something I don't know the word. The question is the percentage of rebound. Does it really help position you in search engines? So I'm not sure what that means, honestly. So is that the right word in English?
I'll take that one if you want, unless he's going to answer, but I think I know what he's talking about.
Okay.
I'm a recovering SEO, so I think I know what he's talking about. I think in the U.S. anyway, it would be bounce rate. And I'm trying to follow the chat to see if he's going to answer that, but I'm assuming that's what that means.
Gotcha.
And even though Google keeps as much as a secret as possible, I do feel like it's been proven that if you have a high bounce rate on your individual web pages, they probably won't perform as well in search results. You know, if Google senses what you can call a pogo sticking, where someone's done a search on Google, they find your content, they click through, but it's not what they were looking for, or they find it to be bad content and they bounce back to Google. That's not a good signal to Google. And over time, they'll probably start moving you down in the rankings in favor of pages that people find that when they click through, they not only stay and read and scroll through it, but they click into another page on that website. And that's how you avoid a bounce rate. And so the short answer is yes, the lower the bounce rate, probably the better that page will perform in the search results.
Okay. I see you shaking your head, Isaiah. Uh-oh. Hold on. Unmuting.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. Yeah,
okay.
No, you summed it up perfectly. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, perfect, Arnie. Thank you very much.
It's the same thing for Google AdWords, just to add to that. Like, Google wants you to be relevant, and they don't want people clicking on something and it's not relevant to what they're finding. And the more you're irrelevant, the more they're going to push you down.
Your quality score drops.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, I mean, really what we're talking about here, I imagine a lot of the businesses you work with, they know their product, they know their industry, they know maybe, you know, largely the persona that they're going after, especially after it's documented, but they don't know a lot of the marketing that you guys are talking about. So how does a company kind of grab a hold of all of this? I presume, you know, they hire experts like some of you, right? In terms of helping them kind of on an ongoing basis, you know, with, like, for instance, Arnie, what you talked about in terms of paid media versus organic, and, you know, how do you start? How does that progress with time? Those are things that not the normal business owner knows, right?
Yeah, and that's again why I think they don't have a strategy. Or if they had a strategy, it might be a little bit more informed. And in fact, we give a presentation at conferences pretty much all around the world, mostly in the U.S. And one of them is called the 10 Steps to Success with Digital Marketing, and it's just stuff we've learned by literally talking and teaching tens of thousands of people at this point over the last 6-7 years. And one of those things we say is that this has to be driven from the C-level. If they don't understand, especially today, because as Carlos was talking about, you know, content, and all of us on this panel, I'm sure, are painfully aware of the need to create content and how difficult it is. There's no shortcuts. I mean, it's work, and you've got to create content. But what's different today than I think has ever been before in the marketing perspective is we used to be able to, 10 or 20 years ago, sign up for whatever traditional media, right? TV, radio, print, whatever, get the creative done, give them a check to publish that creative, and instantly your brand was out there and you were known and the phone would ring or the leads would come in. Where today online, you might be investing in this for 6, 7, 8, 10 months before you're actually starting to see results. And if a CEO doesn't get that, we've seen too often, they stop it. They don't understand why the checks are going out the door, and yet I'm not seeing, nobody can come into my office and give me a tangible ROI. So they need to be educated from the top down as to what the effort really is and what the budget really should be, and get behind it.
I agree with that so much. I'm very passionate about that as well, because I think a lot of these companies, they're run by people that don't understand this. And I honestly think they're going to fail in the next 10 years or very much go down. And I know some friends and their dads are the owners of, a $10 million company, and they're stagnating, and now they're stagnating, but when are they literally going to go out of business? Because that's what I'm seeing in the next 10, 20 years. So you have to understand this at the C level. Like, it's a long-term investment with SEO, with PPC, with all this stuff, even the e-commerce technology. I think it's a 3 to 5 year investment, especially if you're starting from scratch. I mean, then it's definitely a 3 to 5 year investment. So you got to get educated. It starts from the top down, because you can't just put some intern in charge of this or like some low level guy. You have to have at least director level, if not executive level people who understand this.
Gotcha. Oh, makes a lot of sense. Speaking of things that change, and those things are very important that you've mentioned. One of the questions coming in, I believe it's from our member FX. I don't know the name of the person, however. The question is, do any of you who buy or sell into or from foreign markets monitor currency rates and how that affects competitiveness? So how does that affect a typical e-commerce business? Or does it? Most of them don't do that?
Yeah, well, if I may add some perspective onto this, Doug. The challenging part is we've been we met FX people in DC, and unfortunately, few of the currencies that we work with are not covered by FX. I wish they can find some portfolio for other currencies, like small currencies in Georgia and Azerbaijan. I think even Turkey is not there. So it depends on the currency, what type of currency. Sometimes countries have limitations from the fiscal policy standpoint. You can't transact any particular transaction with USD or any other currency or euro unless you are not in the European Union area. And this is something that probably has to be addressed on the government level, like policy level from the US government perspective. Maybe they can support small companies to hedge the risks against the currency fluctuations in particular area, in particular region of the world.
Okay, very, very good. I think we, and if anybody has any additional answers to that, let me know, but we only have a few minutes and we may only have time for one more question, and it's regarding getting paid. So I know, Elshan, you talked a little bit about that, but overall, how these systems are structured, I presume that most of the time you receive payment and then it gets shipped. Is that always the case? Or how do you make sure that the system gets you paid?
If you ask me, definitely there are a few services around the world, and primarily from US perspective, the company that provides payment services like Pioneer, like TransferWise and others in the area. But sometimes it's challenging. When the buyer in their home country tries to pay for something, they charge hefty fees, like banks, because there are some monopolies in the local area, and it's particularly in Central Asia, like countries in Central Asia. It's part of the Caspian region, like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. And for example, if you charge, if your transaction cost is 3% for regular transaction happening in US, it's going to be like around 20% transaction costs on your transaction side, and plus 5% or $5 per transaction from the buyer's perspective. So you either have to offer something high value, so where you can make a little, not little, but higher markup on top of your product, or you will have to eat up this and then reduce the price that you usually charge for your domestic sales. So it's a little tricky, and every country differs. It depends on the product you sell and the country that you sell to. And there are solutions. There are certain solutions. We offer, for example, merchant account solutions for the Caspian region, but it's not working everywhere. So you have to make sure that your target customer is in a particular region, in a particular country, that they can transact with those buyers or sellers.
This is kind of like a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Some of this can be solved with some of the payment gateways like Stripe, for example. Stripe is one of the recent payment gateways, and it really ensures pretty good seamless transactions across countries. Similarly, Shopify also provides a lot of services. Earlier, somebody was talking about how complex marketing and all these things are, but platforms like Shopify try to simplify these for the customers, and they have a very good sort of ecosystem with support, community, blogging, and all sorts of stuff, preferred partners, all that. So I think a lot of things can be solved for the early stage companies by sticking to sort of known platforms that are that have all the support infrastructure along with them. It's of course a different story if you're doing it all yourself as a solo site. Then you're on your own.
Thank you, Tina. Thanks for slipping in there among all the men. Isaiah, did you have a comment, and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure if this is it's kind of a question / comment. There's a platform called Klarna, and there's other platforms like this. Klarna is really big in the Europe, and they're growing in the US. They have a lot of funding. They'll take the credit risk on themselves. So you use Klarna for checkout. You can install it on Shopify or Magento or whatever. And they will, you don't actually put in your credit card information. You just buy the product, and now you owe Klarna the money. So Klarna is basically like the bank, and they're taking on the risk. And so this may be a way to solve that problem. I'm not sure if they work, and they have a lot of sophisticated technology behind that. So I'm not sure if they work in every single market, but they might be able to solve that problem.
Okay, fantastic. Hey, you guys are amazing. You're really extraordinary 6 people, and getting you all together at one time, we weren't able to bend the universe, but it felt like we made a lot of progress in terms of our understanding. And so thank you all. As we've mentioned, we will be writing a blog post about this, and so you as speakers, please communicate back in over the next several days so that we get the information. And as you as a watcher, thank you very much for participating today, and watch for more. Every week we have another topic. One of the comments there was about the difficulty sometime of working in some of these challenging countries, and somebody else mentioned that most Americans, for instance, want to either sell across the street or maybe Canada, Mexico, which is close by, and there's a good reason for that. It's quote unquote easier, but one of the things about the Global Tribe and our members is we don't just do the easy stuff. All of you do the tough stuff, and so we're a tribe of people who are like the challenge. So thank you very much for being part of the Global Tribe, and thank you very much for participating today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.